Imagine turning on the news today and seeing a horrific political massacre, or maybe a random building collapse that crushes innocent people right in the middle of the street.
Yeah, absolute chaos.
Right. And instead of the crowd asking, how do we help? Their very first question is, what did those victims do to deserve it?
It's a dark thought.
It really is. And before we get into all of that, wherever you are right now and whatever you are doing, I want to offer a heartfelt divine blessing for your day and the week ahead.
Absolutely.
May you find profound peace, clarity, and, abundant grace for whatever you're facing. Because today, we are plunging straight into the darkest, most terrifying parts of human tragedy.
Yeah, we really are.
Welcome to our deep dive. We're looking at an ancient text that completely upends how we view disaster, religious rules, and, well, who actually belongs in God's kingdom.
It's a text that systematically strips away every false sense of security a reader might have.
Exactly. So we are focusing specifically on Luke chapter 13. And to help us navigate this, we're relying on the insights from two incredibly thorough scholarly resources.
The Holman Study Bible and the Nova Almeida Actualizada.
Right, the NAA Study Bible. And I want to be clear with you listening, whether you consider yourself a deeply religious person or you just have a massive curiosity about ancient history and sociology.
Which is totally fine, by the way.
Totally. This chapter is an absolute masterclass.
Yeah.
It forces the reader to confront their own hypocrisy.
Because it starts with what was essentially the breaking news of the ancient Middle East.
Right.
The crowds come to Jesus with reports of two very different but, equally horrifying events.
And you realize human psychology just hasn't changed in 2,000 years.
No, not at all.
When the unpredictable happens, we want to categorize it. So let's look at the first tragedy they bring to him. This is basically a political nightmare. Right?
Exactly. The text describes a scenario where Pontius Pilate, the Roman governor, he ruthlessly slaughtered a group of Galileans. And the historical context provided by the scholars is really crucial here.
How so?
Well, Galileans were often viewed by the authorities as rebellious, like a bit rough around the edges, prone to zealotry.
Okay, that makes sense.
But the horrifying detail is where this happened. They were in the temple in Jerusalem, actively offering animal sacrifices.
Wow.
Yeah. Pilate's soldiers went in and killed them to the point where human blood was literally mixed with the blood of the sacrificial animals.
Which is, that's the ultimate desecration.
Complete.
You go to the holiest site to seek God, and you are murdered by a foreign empire in the middle of your worship.
Yeah.
That is human malice at its absolute worst.
Yeah.
But then the text pivots to a completely different kind of disaster.
Yes, Jesus brings up a second recent event, which is the collapse of the Tower of Siloam.
Okay.
This was likely a large structure connected to Jerusalem's city wall, or maybe its water supply. And without warning, it simply gave way, fell, and crushed 18 people to death.
So we have a brutal political assassination. And then we have what insurance companies today would call an act of God.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Or just a freak architectural failure. Two completely different causes of death.
But the crowd's reaction to both is driven by the exact same theological assumption. And this is where we have to understand the first century mindset.
Okay, unpack that for us.
Well, they operated heavily on a system of retributive justice. The assumption was that God actively micromanaged the universe based on daily human behavior.
Like a karma system.
Exactly like karma. If you were wealthy and healthy, you were righteous. If a tower fell on you, or, if you were murdered by Romans, you must have been hiding some uniquely terrible sin.
Okay, I have to jump in here because I think it's so easy to look back at the ancient world and think, oh, how primitive.
Oh, sure.
But we still do this. It's a psychological defense mechanism.
100%.
If I hear about something awful happening to someone, a part of my brain immediately searches for what they did wrong. Did they walk in the wrong neighborhood?
Did they ignore their doctor?
Right. We want to believe that if we just follow the rules, bad things won't happen to us. We try to insulate ourselves from the terrifying randomness of the world by blaming the victims.
That is precisely the human instinct Jesus is confronting here. And the study Bibles note how jarring his response is.
He doesn't play into it at all.
No, he completely severs the link between personal tragedy and specific divine punishment. He asks the crowd, do you think these Galileans were worse sinners than all the other Galileans? Or those 18 were worse offenders than all the others who lived in Jerusalem?
And he answers it himself.
Right, he answers his own question with a flat, unequivocal no.
So he clears the victims' names, which is great, but he doesn't exactly offer a comforting platitude afterward, does he?
Not at all.
Yeah.
He actually uses the tragedies as a mirror. He says, unless you repent, you will all likewise perish.
Whoa.
Yeah. What the historical commentaries point out is that Jesus shifts the focus from analyzing someone else's physical death to evaluating your own spiritual state.
Like a reality check.
Exactly. He's telling the crowd, basically, stop trying to decipher the secret sins of the dead and start looking at the very public rebellion in your own heart, because ultimate judgment is coming for everyone.
Which naturally makes you wonder, right? Like, if judgment is an inevitability, how much time do we actually have to figure this out?
That urgency leads right into a brilliant agricultural parable.
Oh, the fig tree.
Yes. Jesus tells a story about a man who has a fig tree planted in his vineyard. Now, intercropping planting a fruit tree among vines was common, but it meant that tree was taking up precious soil and water.
Right, it's an investment.
And for 3 years, the owner comes looking for fruit and finds absolutely nothing.
Wait, why 3 years? Is that just a random number to show he waited a bit?
Well, the Holman and NWA scholars suggest it's highly symbolic. First, agriculturally, 3 years is enough time for a newly planted tree to reach maturity and produce.
Oh, okay.
But theologically, the tree represents the nation of Israel, and 3 years roughly mirrors the length of Jesus' earthly ministry up to that point.
Oh, wow. That's a great detail.
So the owner says to the vine dresser, cut it down. Why should it use up the soil?
I mean, you can't really argue with his logic. It's a waste of resources at that point.
But then the vine dresser intervenes. He pleads, sir, let it alone this year also, until I dig around it and put on manure. Then if it should bear fruit next year, well and good, but if not, you can cut it down.
There is such a profound tension in that image.
How so?
Well, on one hand, you have incredible grace. The gardener doesn't just leave it alone. He actively works the soil, he adds fertilizer, he gives it every conceivable advantage to succeed.
Right.
But on the other hand, it is a stark warning. The grace period has a hard deadline. It's probation, not a pardon.
Exactly. The tree is living on borrowed time.
So we established that God operates with this immense, long-suffering patience. But what I find really fascinating is what happens next in the text.
The contrast.
Yeah, the narrative immediately drops us into a scenario that highlights the exact opposite: human impatience and pettiness.
We move right into a synagogue on the Sabbath. Jesus is teaching, and the text introduces a woman who has suffered from a spirit of infirmity for 18 years.
18 years. That number keeps coming up. 18 killed by the tower. 18 years of suffering for this woman.
Yes, and the study notes emphasize that this wasn't just a regular physical ailment. It's described as a demonic oppression that manifested as a severe physical deformity. She is bent completely double.
Oh, that's terrible.
I mean, think about the social and psychological toll of that. For nearly 2 decades, she hasn't been able to stand up straight, look at the sky, or look another human being in the eye.
It's heartbreaking.
Jesus sees her, calls her over, and says, woman, you are freed from your disability. He lays his hands on her, and immediately she is made straight and begins glorifying God.
You would think the room would erupt. I mean, a woman who has been suffering visibly in their community for 18 years is suddenly healed. It's a spectacular miracle.
Yet the leader of the synagogue is indignant.
It's wild.
He actually ignores Jesus and scolds the crowd. He says, there are 6 days on which work ought to be done. Come on those days and be healed, and not on the Sabbath day.
Okay, I have to stop here because I am genuinely baffled by this reaction.
It's a lot to process.
How can someone witness a literal miracle and be mad about the scheduling? Like, I know they had rules about the Sabbath, but this seems totally unhinged. What is the mechanism behind this kind of legalism?
Well, to understand his outrage, you really have to understand how the Sabbath law had mutated by the 1st century.
Mutated?
Yeah. Originally, the Sabbath was given as a beautiful gift. A day of rest to honor God and remember that human beings are not just machines built for labor.
Right, it was supposed to be freeing.
But over the centuries, religious leaders created an incredibly dense, microscopic legal code to protect the Sabbath. They defined work in 39 distinct categories.
Wow, 39.
And healing, unless it was a matter of absolute, immediate life and death, was classified as medical work.
Ah, I see. So it's not that he hates the woman. It's that in his mind, the legal code is actually more sacred than human flourishing.
Exactly.
It's like a city official citing a minor zoning violation to stop a paramedic from doing CPR on the sidewalk. The obsession with the rule completely blinds him to the reality of what the rule was meant to protect.
That is a perfect way to look at it. And Jesus' response dissects that hypocrisy with surgical precision.
He doesn't hold back.
No, he calls them hypocrites and uses an argument from the lesser to the greater. He points out that according to their own microscopic rules, they are allowed to untie their ox or donkey on the Sabbath and lead it to water.
So they do work to alleviate the thirst of farm equipment, basically.
Yes. So Jesus essentially asks, if you can untie an animal to give it a drink, shouldn't this woman, whom he purposefully honors by calling her a daughter of Abraham who has been tied up by Satan for 18 years, be untied from her bond on the Sabbath day?
Oh, wow. The wordplay there is incredible. He uses the exact same imagery. You untie a donkey, I just untied a human being.
The logic is airtight. The text notes that all his adversaries were put to shame, and the entire crowd rejoiced at the glorious things he was doing.
Right.
It is a definitive triumph of genuine liberating compassion over rigid religious red tape.
But, this brings up a huge question for me.
Yeah.
Jesus just publicly humiliated the religious elite, and he demonstrated power over sickness and demons.
He's on a roll.
Right. If I'm in the crowd, I'm thinking, okay, the revolution's starting right now. He's going to overthrow the Romans, kick out the corrupt priests, and establish a massive earthly kingdom.
Naturally.
But instead, the text says he pivots to talking about gardening and baking.
Yeah.
Why on earth does he deflate the momentum to talk about a mustard seed?
It seems like a huge letdown, doesn't it?
Yeah, a bit anticlimactic.
But what the historical scholars point out is that Jesus realizes the crowd fundamentally misunderstands what God's kingdom looks like. They want a conquering military force with trumpets and chariots. So he has to redefine power using the most mundane domestic examples possible: a mustard seed and some yeast.
Okay, unpack the mustard seed for us.
To the first century listener, the mustard seed was proverbial for being the absolute smallest of seeds. You could blow it off the palm of your hand.
Tiny.
Yet Jesus says a man plants it, and it grows into a massive tree. The NWA study notes highlight that under the right conditions, this plant reaches heights of over 3 meters, or 10 feet tall.
Wow.
It becomes so expansive that birds make nests in its branches.
So it's about disproportionate results.
Yeah.
It starts off looking entirely insignificant, like a controversial rabbi from a backwater town with a handful of followers, but it grows into this massive sheltering structure.
Exactly. And he deepens this idea with the parable of the yeast, or leaven. He says the kingdom is like yeast that a woman took and hid in 3 measures of flour until the whole thing was leavened.
Now, anyone who bakes knows you don't need much yeast for a loaf of bread, but the commentaries point out something wild about the math here, right?
They do. 3 measures of flour equates to roughly 50 pounds of flour.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that is an industrial-sized baking operation. It's enough to bake bread for 100 people.
That's a huge feast.
But there's a deeper theological twist that the original audience would have caught immediately. In the ancient world, yeast wasn't a sterile little packet you bought at the store.
Right.
It was a fermented, rotting piece of dough saved from a previous batch. Because of that, leaven in the Bible almost universally symbolizes sin or corruption spreading like the leaven of the Pharisees.
Oh, interesting. But here Jesus completely flips the script.
Yes. This is a rare positive use of the metaphor. The yeast represents the kingdom of God.
What I really love about this is the mechanism of how yeast works. You knead it into the dough and it disappears.
It goes completely invisible.
Yeah. The Romans couldn't see it. The religious leaders couldn't track it. But once it's in the dough, it is completely unstoppable. It works from the inside out, chemically altering the flour until the entire massive batch is transformed.
The kingdom doesn't conquer by force from the top down. It transforms by infiltration from the bottom up.
Okay, so that leads us to a really difficult theological pivot in the chapter. If the kingdom is this massive tree, and if it's baking enough bread for a 100-person feast, does that mean everyone automatically gets a seat at the table?
Well, as Jesus is traveling through the towns toward Jerusalem, someone in the crowd asks him exactly that. Lord, are only a few saved?
And I noticed reading through the text that Jesus flatly refuses to answer the question.
He does.
He doesn't give a percentage. He doesn't say only a few or most people. He dodges the math completely. Why?
Because the question is treating salvation like an abstract theological trivia concept. The study Bibles explain that Jesus never lets people remain comfortable in the theoretical.
Great, he makes it practical.
Exactly. He immediately shifts the focus to a deeply personal, urgent imperative. He replies, strive to enter through the narrow door.
Strive. That's a really intense word.
It is. The original Greek word is agonizomai, which is where we get the word agony.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was used in athletic or gladiatorial contexts. It implies an intense, exhausting struggle. Because, Jesus warns, many will try to enter after the door has been shut and they will fail.
This goes right back to the fig tree, doesn't it? The probation period, the
Exactly.
grace period is long, but it ends. Eventually, the master of the house locks the door.
Yes. And what is truly terrifying is the argument made by the people left outside banging on the door. They don't scream, "We didn't know you existed."
Right? What is their defense?
They say, "We ate and drank in your presence and you taught in our streets."
It's like a modern person saying, but I went to the right church. I listened to all the right theological deep dives. I hung out with the right people.
The Holman scholars emphasize this crucial distinction. Proximity is not intimacy.
That is so good. Proximity is not intimacy.
These people had a casual acquaintance with the truth. They were physically near Jesus, but they never actually submitted to his teaching. They never let the yeast transform the dough of their lives.
Wow.
And the master's response from inside is chilling. He says, "I do not know where you come from. Depart from me, all you workers of evil."
So just being in the general vicinity of goodness doesn't save you.
Not at all. And then Jesus delivers a concept theologians call the Great Reversal, which would have been an absolute earthquake to his original Jewish audience.
How so?
He tells them that the insiders, the Israelites, who assumed they had VIP access to the kingdom simply because of their ethnic heritage, will be cast out into weeping and gnashing of teeth.
While the outsiders take their seats.
Yes. He says people will come from the east, west, north, and south, meaning Gentiles, non-Jews from the far corners of the pagan world, and they will recline at the table with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
Almost a stunt.
Big time. The last will be first, and the first will be last. He entirely demolishes their religious caste system.
Well, you don't dismantle the religious and political structures of your day without making powerful enemies.
That's for sure.
Which brings us to the final scene. Some Pharisees actually approached Jesus to warn him that King Herod Antipas, the ruler of Galilee, wants him dead.
And Jesus is entirely unfazed.
Really?
Yeah, he tells the Pharisees, "Go and tell that fox, behold, I cast out demons and perform cures today and tomorrow, and the third day I finish my course."
Calling a reigning violent monarch a fox is incredibly bold. What did that mean in their culture?
Well, the cultural notes clarify that unlike calling someone a lion, which implies majesty and dangerous power, calling someone a fox meant they were crafty, sly, but ultimately insignificant.
Like a nuisance.
Exactly, a nuisance. Jesus is saying that his timeline isn't dictated by a petty local tyrant. His destiny lies ahead in Jerusalem. Because, as he says with a heavy dose of tragic irony, it cannot be that a prophet should perish away from Jerusalem.
Which leads right into what has to be one of the most emotional, heartbreaking passages in the ancient text.
Yeah, the lament.
Jesus looks toward the capital city and he just breaks into a lament.
Oh, Jerusalem. Jerusalem, the city that kills the prophets and stones those who are sent to it.
And he uses this shockingly tender, maternal metaphor. He says, "How often would I have gathered your children together as a hen gathers her brood under her wings, and you are not willing."
It is a staggering image.
It really is.
You have the Almighty God, the one who holds the absolute power to shut the narrow door, comparing himself to a vulnerable mother hen in a barn fire.
Wow.
A hen will literally let herself burn to death to shield the chicks huddled beneath her wings. That is the depth of protection and love he was offering. But the tragic summary of their history is just 4 words. You are not willing.
They chose the rigid red tape. They chose the hypocritical Sabbath rules. They chose proximity over actual intimacy.
And because of that choice, the consequences are devastating. Jesus predicts, "Behold, your house is forsaken."
That's haunting.
The commentaries firmly link this prophecy to the literal destruction of Jerusalem and the temple by the Roman legions in 70 AD. Because they rejected the ultimate shelter, they were left exposed to the fire.
It is an incredibly heavy ending to a chapter that really does not pull a single punch.
No, it doesn't.
So if we step back and look at the entire landscape of what the Holman and NAA's study Bibles have walked us through today, we started with Jesus dismantling our obsession with assigning blame for random tragedies, pushing us instead to examine our own spiritual urgency.
We saw how he exposed the absurdity of religious legalism, proving that true compassion and human liberation will always override mechanical rule following.
And we discovered the subversive, quiet, but unstoppable reality of how God's kingdom actually grows, like yeast hidden in massive amounts of flour.
Right. And finally, we confronted the sobering reality of the narrow door and the tragedy of a people who refuse to let themselves be loved.
As we said at the beginning, this text leaves the reader nowhere to hide. It demands that you ask yourself what you are truly relying on for your security.
Exactly. What the text is asking the reader to do is incredibly uncomfortable.
It forces us to ask, are you in your own life right now mistaking mere proximity to goodness for actual internal transformation?
It's easy to do.
It is. Listening to the right things, being in the right spaces, knowing the right lingo that's just eating and drinking near the door. Proximity isn't enough. It's the transformation of the heart that allows you to walk through it.
It's an agonizing question, but a vital one.
And that is something worth wrestling with this week. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the text. We love unpacking these historical and theological complexities with you. God blesses all of you, our listeners. Have a wonderful week, and we will see you next time.